You're just up to Pokemon.xx here, and welcome to my Soul Hackers 2 review. Yes, I am fully aware that the game has been out for over a month now, but you know what? I'm actually somewhat glad that I waited until today to make this review, but we'll get into that later. So, yeah, for those who somehow aren't aware and are still watching this video for some reason, on August 26th, my fucking birthday, Atlus released a game called Soul Hackers 2, which was a sequel to a game that came out on the fucking Sega Saturn of all things. Why did they decide to make a sequel to a Sega Saturn game? I don't fucking know. But regardless, I decided to pick it up because, you know, I've become somewhat of an Atlus fan over the past year. I've been playing through the Persona games, and this game looked genuinely interesting to me. It looked pretty, you know, intriguing. So I decided to pick it up, and today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts. There will be no spoilers in this video, and all of the footage is from the Soul Matrix, which is the dungeon that sort of goes throughout the whole game, so there isn't really going to be much spoilers. Any spoilers that there are, which I don't think there are any actually in the footage, but if there are, I'll just cut that out. So, yeah, there's going to be no spoilers in the footage, and I'm not going to be spoiling anything here. If I do end up going into spoilers, I will warn you beforehand, but yeah, for the most part, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. So, let's not waste any more time, and let's just get right into this. So, I'm going to start this off by talking about the story of the game. I think we should get that out of the way first. So, being an Atlus game, and just, I guess, just a JRPG in general, this game obviously was anticipated to be very story-heavy, especially considering a lot of the trailers were building up all this stuff, and the fact that the game only has 4 characters. Like, you know, you only have 4 party members throughout the entire game, which is, you know, not normal for this kind of game. So you'd expect the story to be, you know, really interesting, but honestly, this game's story is extremely underwhelming. Like, honestly, the story does pick up eventually, but it only picks up, like, at the end of the second last dungeon. It's fucking... Honestly, I don't even know. It feels like... I don't know, this game's story was just so meh to me. Like, it's not a bad story. I wouldn't say it's bad, but overall, it just didn't really intrigue me. The villain is very uninteresting, even though one of the main characters is literally has a strong connection to the main villain. I don't know, man. Like, it just didn't click with me the same way a lot of other Atlus stories have. Now, I also do want to make something clear beforehand. This is my first non-Persona Mega 10 game. I should probably say that, you know, straight out the gate. So, but regardless, I'm not gonna, well, obviously that is going to affect my perception somewhat, but I'm gonna try to be as unbiased as possible when it comes to comparing this to Persona. I honestly don't think there's really much comparison to be made to Persona outside of a few things. So, regardless, I just want to get that out of the way. But, for a quick rundown of the story, spoiler-free wise, obviously, you play as Ringo, who is an AI created from, how the fuck would you even describe it? Like some kind of presence, an AI presence named Ion. She's created alongside another AI named Fig, and they're sent to save the world because Ion has predicted impending doom. You end up teaming up with a bunch of devil summoners named Arrow, who works for what the fuck are they called? Yatagarasu, Melody, who works for the Phantom Society, and Saizo, who is a freelance devil summoner. Yatagarasu was the main, I guess, good guy force in the first devil summoner game, and the Phantom Society was the main evil force in the older devil summoner games. So, yeah, the whole point is you got all these different summoners who come from different backgrounds, and they're all helping you out. And you keep these 4 party members throughout the entire game. And basically your goal is to stop the villain named Iron Mask from bringing about the end of the world. That's basically the story. I'll get into all the characters' motivations after this. I don't really think there's much... I'm not going to go into too spoiler territory. I probably will bring up a few things, but it won't be too bad, hopefully. But overall, the story itself wasn't really what grasped me. As I say, it does pick up, like, close to the very, very end. And I mean, like, the very end. As I said, like, second last dungeon. At the end of that dungeon is when I actually started to give a shit about what was going on in the story. Prior to that, the story was just basically there so you would have a goal. That's really it. So moving on, I want to talk about the characters now. So let's start off with Ringo. Ringo is one of, well, maybe not the only, but one of the first non-silent protagonists Atlus has done. I don't know if they've ever done another one before her. If they have, Let me know in the comments. But honestly, I was very skeptical going into this because I had never seen Atlus write a non-silent protagonist before, and they absolutely nailed it. Ringo's a great character. She's a little weird at times, but I find her really, really likable. She was one of my favorite characters in the game. That's for fucking sure. Then we have okay, I'll talk about Fig next. Fig is the other AI, and even though she has a comp and she is able to battle, she isn't a party member. She's basically your navigator, from the Persona games. Someone like Futaba, Fuka, Rise, that kind of character who just sort of talks to you during battle, but nowhere near as useful as them. She doesn't really talk to you during battle, she just kind of navigates you through the dungeons kind of thing. It's weird. She's also a great character. It takes her a while to get interesting, but when things finally pick up, yeah, she does end up becoming a really interesting character, but it does take her a while to get there. Next up, let's talk about Arrow. So, Arrow is the Yatagarasu member who I was talking about earlier, the main good guy force from the first Devil's Summoner game. And yeah, look, I'm not even gonna bullshit you. This guy is this guy is so fucking boring. He is so boring. He's not even like a Captain America, Superman type of goody two-shoes type where people say he's boring but he's actually quite interesting. No, he's more like a John Cena, Hulk Hogan type. He's just so fucking boring. Genuinely, I don't even know what to say about him. He's your typical good guy who likes the rules and is righteous. There's a lot of people saying that they think Arrow may have been the original protagonist, and honestly, I think so, because he has about as much fucking personality as a typical Megaten protagonist. So, yeah, I believe that. I really don't have that much to say about Arrow. I just think he's boring as all piss. Next up, we have Melody, the Phantom Society member. Honestly, I'm going to be honest with y'all, I do not like Melody at all. I find Melody extremely annoying. Extremely annoying. Honestly, the fact that Melody is considered one of your allies is really, really dumb to me, because her fucking motivations are way too in line with Strega from Persona 3 for me to actually like her, because I fucking hated Strega. Strega were a bunch of selfish pricks, and her goal, as well as the Phantom Society's goal in this game, reminds me way too much of that for me to really find her likable. Not to mention, she never really relents from what the Phantom Society wants to do, despite the fact that it is, I think it's fair to say, objectively wrong. So, I don't know. I did not like Melody at all. And her backstory, well, yeah, it does have a lot of, well, let's say meat to it. I just didn't find myself giving a shit, because it's I don't really like this character. Not to mention that they gloss over a lot of her backstory, and there's some really uncomfortable implications going on with it. I don't know, man. Not much. I didn't find much really to like about Melody. That's all I'll really say. But enough of being negative. Now I want to talk about Saizo, who is the best character in this game. I do not exaggerate when I say that. Saizo is fucking great. I fucking love this guy. He was the one character whose backstory I genuinely cared about, probably because of how much of the game was actually dedicated to his backstory. I've heard a lot of people say that's actually something that they don't like, is that Saizo is given way more time to flesh out his backstory than either Arrow or Melody gets. And while, yeah, I can see that, honestly, I'm just glad one of these characters is fleshed out. And Saizo's entire arc, I just loved. Anytime this guy spoke, he was just... Because when you meet Saizo, you can totally imagine him being one way, but he's actually another. He's actually the complete opposite of what you expect him to be. You expect him to be this pimp type who, that kind of character, where in truth, he's actually a super nice guy and super well thought out kind of thing. I don't know. I loved Saizo. So, yeah. Saizo and Ringo and Fig are all great characters, but then you got Arrow and Melody, who I'm just not the biggest fan of. And it even sucks even more because Arrow and Melody are always at each other's throats because they're on opposing sides of this whole Yatagarasu fucking Phantom Society war. And I swear to God, anytime you do the Hangout event, which we'll talk about later, it's always those two. It's always those two. Why is it always those two? But regardless, before we move on from characters, I actually want to talk a little bit about the voice acting. The English dub of this game is absolutely fantastic. I thought the voice actors absolutely nailed the characters. Even the characters I'm not a huge fan of, I thought were absolutely nailed. I thought they absolutely nailed it right in the head. But I do want to say, Arrow's voice actor, despite not being Yuri Lowenthal, sounds a hell of a lot like Yuri Lowenthal. Like, what? Was Yuri Lowenthal just not available? Because this dude sounds just fucking like him. I've never heard of this guy before in my life, but he sounds just like Yuri Lowenthal. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, it's scary how much he sounds like him. But, to be honest, I only really threw in the voice acting thing just to say that, because I thought it was weird. But yeah, the voice acting's great overall. The dub's really, really good. Which I think some people are actually worried about the dub for this game, probably because the trailer for the dub was fucking dog shit. So I think that gave some people bad vibes about it. But no, the dub is great, and yeah, basically if you're someone who doesn't mind playing an English dub, I know there's a lot of people who fucking swear by the Japanese dialogue, even if the English dub is good. But yeah, if you're someone who isn't like that, then yeah, the English dub is great. You don't have to worry about that. Next up, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, in my notes here, I have the gameplay split out into 3 separate sections. I'm going to talk about them in the order I do not have them in here, but regardless. So let's start off with the battle system. The battle system in this game is not quite what I think a lot of people expect. I think a lot of people expected this to use the press turn system from mainline, or something like some kind of mixture between the SMT system of the press turn system and the Persona 1 More system, since this is sort of supposed to, I think this game was clearly supposed to, you know, be a middle point between SMT and Persona, since those are really the only Mega 10 series still going at this point. So I think they kind of wanted something to bridge the gap between those two franchises, which is smart. But if you want to bridge the gap between those two franchises, why not? Especially considering those two series have very similar battle systems with quite big differences, granted, but still, why would you give this middle point game such a different battle system? Rather than using the press turn or 1 More system, where if you hit an enemy, you get an extra turn. In this game, the amount of weaknesses you hit will add to your stack meter, which at the end of your turn will cause all of your demons to rush the enemy in the style of something like an all-out attack from Persona. Now, this system is fine. I actually really, really like this system, but there are points where it feels like a very typical turn-based RPG. Not that's a bad thing. Turn-based combat can actually be really, really fun, even when it doesn't have all of the Mega 10 bonuses and stuff. Like, it can still be great. And I do think this game has a good combat system, but it just isn't on par with the 1 More or press turn systems, in my opinion. Because, I don't know, that system is just so interesting to me that it's like, why wouldn't you use that system? Especially considering what this game is trying to do. Another weird thing was that critical attacks don't add to your stack unless you get that specific ability for each character, which we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I find that really, really weird. But another thing I really, really like is that if you upgrade your characters throughout the game, they'll actually start to add more than 1 to your stack per turn, which will then cause the Sabbaths, the big rushes, to be even more powerful, which I thought was really, really interesting. And the game really makes you think. It's more about coverage than it is actual damage, which I think is really, really interesting, and it is a good combat system. I cannot make that clear enough. This game does have a good combat system. I just find it very, very interesting that they went about it this way. Another thing that I found interesting was that the characters are all, like, another thing, look, I know I said I wasn't going to compare this to Persona very much, but honestly, this game reminds me, like, this game's battle system and the way it handles demons reminds me a lot of Persona, because it kind of reminds me of the old Persona games where you could equip each of your party members with a demon, and that's pretty much the same here. Each party member is basically just an outlet for you to equip a demon to. And you can equip any demon to any character. That's how it works. However, each character does have specific elements that they veer towards. So, you know, for example, Ringo has electricity, Saizo has wind or force. A lot of people are calling it wind, but it's called Zama, which is the force element from the older Mega 10 games, so I guess it's force. Arrow has ice and Melody has fire, while obviously some people are good for them. Like Saizo is really, really good for healing. Melody and Ringo are both good for physical. Saizo and Arrow are both good for gun damage. Basically, they can use anything, but they do definitely veer towards certain types. Which, in my experience, I just ended up using the things they were actually good at because it helped me, maximize damage and healing and stuff. But I could totally see why people would experiment and end up giving them things that they're maybe not as great with. There's even some elements that like some of them can't use. Like there's these items in the game. I actually forget what they're called, and that's pissing me off. But you can give them to the characters, and it will up how much damage a certain element will do, or it will decrease the cost of each element, stuff like that. But some characters can't equip these for certain elements, and I think that's really, really interesting. So there is definitely, each character isn't just a blank slate. They do have their own ups and downs when it comes to different elements, which I find really, really interesting. But yeah, that's just the main battle system. Now it's time to talk about the dungeons. So the dungeons in this game are, I think, where it's getting most of its flack from. Because a lot of people are talking about how the dungeons are super duper boring, and honestly, I can see why. If I had to pick a game that this game's dungeons remind me the most of, it's Persona 4's dungeons. It reminds me a lot of Persona 4's dungeons, except it's not randomized, but it really feels randomized. And it's so when they even, like, the worst part is they actually reuse assets. Like there's there are 2 or 3 dungeons in this game that use a subway design, which I think is like, why? Why? I don't understand that. Why would you do that? Why would you just reuse the same theme for a dungeon like 2 or 3 times? Really? And there's 2 ones that take place in shipping districts. Like, what? The dungeons already all feel the same. Do you really have to make them all look the same? Not to mention the dungeons just aren't that interesting in and of themselves. But, like, then there's also the case of, like, there isn't really treasure chest in this game. Instead, you send your demons out on demon recon, and whenever you find your demons, you can talk to them, and sometimes they'll give you items, sometimes they'll offer to heal you, and stuff like that. But the most interesting thing is that this is also how demon recruitment works. So whenever you talk to a demon, sometimes they'll say, here, this demon wants to join your party. And they'll just ask you a single thing. They'll ask, oh, can you give me this item? Can you give me some of your health? Can you give me some of your SP? Shit like that. And all you have to do is say yes, and the demon immediately joins your party. Like, recruitment is really, really easy in this game. With the one issue of sometimes your demons will try and recruit other demons that are higher than your level. Why is that even an option? Why can demons that are higher than your level even show up? I don't understand why they even made that a thing. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Why? I don't understand that. But regardless of everything I've just said, the dungeons are fine. Like, they're not, like, as I say, they're just boring, I think is the main problem, but I can deal with that. Like, they're not egregious, and overall I did still enjoy my time in most of them. But then there's also another thing. So, all the footage you're seeing right now is from a specific dungeon that I brought up earlier called the Soul Matrix. This is basically this game's version of Mementos, or Tartarus, where it goes throughout the entire game, and basically there's 3 sectors to it that are each based on your own characters, and as you progress through the game, you'll get to know the characters more, and you'll unlock more and more of their Soul Matrix. The Soul Matrix literally looks the exact same for all 3 characters. There are no differences. There are no fucking differences between the 3 characters. There are different layouts, but they all have the same design. Why? I don't understand that. And at the end of each floor of the Soul Matrix, you'll end up learning more about the character. You'll end up seeing a vision quest or something like that. I don't really know. It doesn't really, and then it all ends up paying off where at the end you see a glimpse into their future or something like that. Okay, for anyone who's watching this before they're playing the game, make sure you get to the flash forward. Once you see into the character's future, then you can stop, because the Soul Matrix, getting to the end of each character's Soul Matrix, is what gets you the good ending. Alright? The game does not give you any inclination of this, so I'm going to tell you right now. If anyone is watching this who hasn't played the game, make sure you finish each character's Soul Matrix. The game will let you know whenever you've seen all the vision quests. At that point, that's whenever you're done with that character's Soul Matrix and you can move on. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the frustration of that later on when we talk about the social elements, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, the Soul Matrix, it's it's not awful, but it's not great either. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't really like it either. The best part about the Soul Matrix is that as you go through it and unlock different doors, you'll be able to give your characters new abilities, like what I mentioned before, where they can, if Melody, say, uses a fire attack on an enemy that's weak to it, it'll add 2 to the stack rather than 1. Then later on, you get one where it has a chance to add 3 to the stack rather than 2, which is, you know, pretty interesting. Plus other things like Melody gets one that allows you to speed up and stuff like that. Which, speaking of that, that's another problem I have with the dungeons in this game. Ringo's movement is way too fucking slow. Ringo moves so fucking slow in this game. Like, honestly, she felt like a slug sometimes. There's a lot of people who say one of the best abilities to get in the game is Melody's speed up ability. But the problem is that uses SP to use. So if you use it too much, which to be fair is actually pretty cheap, but if you use it too much, it'll end up costing you a lot of Melody's MP. However, literally today, the day I'm recording this, Atlus put out an update for the game that has added a running feature. I shit you not. They've added a running feature there. This is why I'm actually glad I ended up waiting until now to make this, so I can bring this up in my review. Atlas, what the fuck? Really? Really? You didn't think to add this in beforehand? Ringo is so goddamn slow. You know what? This isn't even the first time they've done this. Whenever the game was released for early access for creators and stuff, a lot of people were complaining about the weird camera angle, how Ringo was slightly to the left and you would look over her left shoulder and how close she was to the camera and how you couldn't do anything about this. However, whenever the game fully released, they added the ability to center Ringo, which I did, as you're seeing from this footage, and it looks considerably better. And I also had the ability to zoom out, which I don't believe I used, or maybe I did, I actually don't remember. I don't think I zoomed out at all. But yeah, they ended up adding that. So like, why was this stuff not in the game in the first place? This feels like common fucking knowledge to have in the game. Why would you not have it in from the start? But regardless, that's really all I can think to say about the Dungeons and Soul Matrix. Point is, Ringo moves slow until now, where they actually have added a running feature. And yeah, the whole Demon Recon thing is really, really weird. Now, the last thing about actual gameplay I want to talk about is the boss fights. This game's boss fights can actually be pretty challenging sometimes. Like, there's 2 boss fights in particular that happened decently early in the game that I really, really struggled with. I really struggled with some of the boss fights in this game, and it was a fucking welcome change considering how easy Persona 5 was. I haven't played SMT 5 to be clear, so I don't know how hard that game is. I've heard it's pretty hard though. It is SMT, so SMT is usually pretty hard, but I don't know, I can't speak on that game. But regardless, I was expecting this game to be more on the easy side, considering, you know, based on the marketing, you can so tell it is trying to appeal to Persona fans. But no, they didn't. They actually made the game decently challenging, and I applaud Atlus for that. This game can be quite hard at times. Only thing is, if you're playing on normal difficulty like I am, you're able to get an item. See, usually in the easy modes of Atlus games, they always have some sort of continue ability where if you die in battle, you can just instantly revive all your characters, but it's usually exclusive to the easy mode. And in this game, that's partially true. You do get infinite revives in the easy mode. However, now it is possible to get continue items in normal mode. And this makes some boss fights... For instance, there was a fight with Iron Mask about... I think it was the second fight with Iron Mask. I really, really struggled with. The fight is really, really hard. I was able to get through it no problem by using those continue items. So honestly, I don't think those continue items should have been in the normal mode. I think they make the game a little too easy if you wait to use them at the right time. Granted, they are quite rare, but I just don't understand why. If that makes sense. Like, it felt like a weird choice to me. I don't know. That felt weird to me. But aside from that, yeah, the boss fights are actually pretty fucking good in this game. And a lot of them do force you to think outside the box with your Sabbaths and your strategies. Not to mention, I didn't even bring up I think they're called the commander skills that Ringo can learn, where she can like switch demons mid-battle, or she can power up her Sabbaths, or she can focus the Sabbath all onto one enemy, or she can add an extra stack to each person's turn. I think they're called commander. Yeah, they're called commander skills. I just saw that on the screen there. Yeah, by the way, yes, I can see the screen that you guys were saying as I'm talking. So yeah, it is commander skills. And the boss fights really force you to think about those and use those in the right ways. Yeah, the boss fights really do make you think, and I think they're great for the most part. Some of them are actually pretty, pathetic, but for the most part, I think they're actually pretty decent. But anyway, moving on from the actual gameplay, now I'm going to talk about the upgrades of the game. So, the way this game works is, rather than replacing your weapons, you upgrade your demon comp as the game progresses by going to the compsmith. And you're able to do a lot of different things. You're able to, well, I said before that some characters can't use certain elements. You're able to unlock certain elements for certain characters, improve how good characters are with certain elements, make it so that criticals can do, so criticals can add to your stack. There's a lot of different upgrades you can do, and I absolutely love this aspect of the game. I spent a lot of time in the compsmith trying to find the absolute best things to add to my comp. It was so much fucking fun. I adored this part of the game. I absolutely love this. I thought this was really, really good. Actually, that's really all I can think to say. I'm trying to remember actual specifics about it, but it has been a little while since I actually played the game. But yeah, this was really, really fun to mess with, and I would always go in and I would move it up, because the way it says, I said before that you can improve each character's elemental ability. Basically, the way that works is it allows you to, those items I was talking about before, basically it allows you to equip higher ranks of those items to each character, which allows their elements to get better and better and better. This is something that you should not pass up on, because this can really, really help with the game. It's so much fun to work with, and it can make you feel so fucking powerful if you do it the right way. And next up I want to talk about fusion. So fusion in this game works pretty much the same way it does in any other game. I will say that I don't like that there isn't an option to just see everything you can possibly fuse with your current party. I don't know why that isn't in the game. You think after like a few games have had that now, that they would just have that in every game, but it's not in this game. And I thought that was weird. The search system for whenever you're searching is really, really weird. There's a lot of weird stuff. Not to mention, if you bought the DLC demons will be counted in that, and that can really fuck you up. The fusion, it's not bad, but there was just some things about it, like, as I say, not having these are all the things you can fuse with your current party option, and the DLC demons make it considerably, it's just, I don't know, it's just weird, it was weird. It was really, really weird. But aside from that, yeah, fusion is pretty much the same way it's always been. There's not really much to say here. And next I want to talk about the hangouts. So, the game has a feature called, oh my god, I'm actually forgetting what it was called. Basically, throughout the game, whenever you talk to characters, you'll get options throughout the game, which basically you'll have options to choose from, and depending on what you choose, different characters will like your response more. And this will up their soul level. It's called a soul level, I just remembered that. This will up your soul level with them, and this is required to progress in the soul matrix. Basically, each soul matrix, each character's soul matrix has doors that you'll need to get through, and each of them is locked behind a certain soul level of that character. And basically, the best thing to do about these is to basically, because the game tells you beforehand which character is going to like each choice more, so just try to make it as even as possible by the time you get to the end of the game. But even doing that, you're probably still not going to have it at 100, which is what it needs to be at in order to finish the soul matrix to the point you need to. So that's the point where you're going to need to go to hangouts. Now, hangouts are basically throughout the game, whether it's through main story quests or side quests, which we'll talk about later, you will unlock different hangout events where you can go to your bar and hang out with each character, whether it's one character at a time or it can happen in groups. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most common groups seems to be Arrow and Melody for some fucking reason. But yeah, these hangout events, they're not as deep as the social links from Persona. This game isn't a social sim like Persona is. But they're still really fun, and you can learn a little bit more about the characters. It's nothing super significant, but some of the conversations are quite fun. Like, there's one in particular where Saizo starts talking about like a game that he played as a kid, and it's clearly supposed to be Pokemon. But then Ringo points out that the trainers from this game are basically devil summoners, and I'm kind of wondering if that's Atlas pointing out that, you know, Megaten came before Pokemon, and it's like, hey, we did it first, bitch, kind of thing. Which, I don't know, if that's the case, that's funny as fuck. But that was like one of my favorite ones. Another one is one with Arrow and Melody, where you ask them about their favorite movie, and then Arrow says it's like some movie about some dog, and then Melody's face basically just tells the whole story. Like, look, some of these are really, really fun. I'm not gonna talk about much more of them, but they're fun little exchanges, and plus, you know, it ups the soul level with your characters and stuff like that. However, even doing that probably still won't be enough to get you up to the point you need to be at. So that's the point where you need to go and do side quests. Basically, you can go and you can get side quests from Madame Genko, and you can go and do... Now, look, these side quests are... They're not great. They're very repetitive, but the one thing I did like is that each shop owner from the game has their own quest line. I really liked that. I really liked that because I felt like I actually got to know the shopkeepers who have these sprites. Like, if you're going to give them sprites, that you get to know them. And you do. You do get to know them. And I think those side quests in particular are worth doing. 100%. I think they're great. I think those are the best side quests in the fucking game. Problem is, the gameplay of these side quests is repetitive as fuck. It's just, go and do a dungeon, collect this many items, kill this many of this demon, do this, do that. It gets so repetitive after a while. But you do have to do it. By the end of the game, I had gotten basically right up to where the final boss was. And I needed to, finish the Soul Matrix. So I basically just had to go through all the side quests, which I've been basically ignoring the whole game, just hoping I would run into a hangout event. And yeah, it took me a fucking while, but yeah, basically, the point is, you're going to have to do some of these, so if you're going to, at least do the ones that are based around each shopkeeper, because those are the most interesting ones, and you get to learn more about those characters. So, yeah, the side quests, they're not great, but some of them are pretty interesting. Next up, I want to talk about the music of this game. This game, for being an Atlus game, the music really isn't that interesting. Like, none of the tracks really stood out to me. The opening, the track from the opening is really good. The boss theme is pretty decent. And oh my god, the final boss theme? Dude, the final boss theme is sick. But aside from that, the battle theme never really stuck with me. There's literally, I think there's like 3 dungeon themes throughout the whole game. One for the regular dungeons, one for the Soul Matrix, and one for the final dungeon. So, and none of those really stood out to me either, so... I don't know. Not much of the music is really coming to me. I can't really remember much of it. It just wasn't really that memorable aside from the tracks I listed. So that was pretty disappointing considering this is an Atlus game. There's also the art style. I think this game's art style is great. I'm talking more specifically about the sprites here, like the drawn sprites. This game has a very different style. It has a very different art style from what we would expect from Atlus, and I really like it. It has its own. It has this flair about it that, like, it's unique. It's not trying to be something else, which I appreciate. And I like the way it looks. I'm not really the person to talk about art and what I like about it. I'm just kind of stupid in that way. All I know is I look at it and I like it. I can't really comment on it style-wise because I'm a fucking idiot. But I also want to talk about the setting of this game. So this game is obviously set in like a high-tech future where, humanity has properly learned how to harness technology. But the biggest problem is that it doesn't do anything with that setting. Like, there'll be occasional little moments where they'll say something like, hey, this door is very old school with its functionality, but it's never really expanded upon, and it never really affects the game in any significant way. And it's like, if you're going to set your game in a setting like this, at least do something with it. You know what I mean? It's like, honestly, I forgot the game took place in like a cyberpunk setting sometimes because of this. And it's like, really, you really couldn't have done anything with this. I don't know, the setting, it felt like a missed opportunity to me that they didn't do much with that setting, if that makes sense. I felt they could have definitely done more with it, especially considering the technology that they do talk about for brief moments. It's pretty... Okay, it sounds like they could do some interesting stuff with it, but they just don't, and I think it's like, why would you even bother, I mean, obviously it's a sequel to Soul Hackers, so it's like they kind of had to, but that's even something else I want to talk about, and that's that, like, why was this game called Soul Hackers 2? Alright? This game, honestly, if it came down to me, I would have just called this game Devil Summoner 3. Honest to God, because that is honestly, it feels more like, to me, how do I put this? I feel like Devil Summoner 3, because it talks a lot about the Devil Summoner lore, talking about Yatagarasu and the Phantom Society and even the Kuzunoha clan. There's a lot of stuff brought up from the Devil Summoner franchise, and I just don't think this needed the Soul Hackers banner specifically. You know what I mean? It would have made more sense just have this be a continuation of the Devil Summoner franchise rather than a second Soul Hackers, because, like, this really doesn't have all that much to do, from what I hear, with the original Soul Hackers. I haven't played the original Soul Hackers yet. I have it, but I haven't got around to playing it yet. I do intend to, because I've heard it's great. But, I don't know, I feel like this game should have just been called Devil Summoner 3, and they should have just rolled with that, because Soul Hackers 2 feels like a weird name for this game, and I kind of was getting that vibe throughout the whole game. I don't know, that felt weird to me. But before I wrap this up, I do want to talk about one more thing, and that's the DLC. So, this game had some of the worst Day 1 DLC I've ever seen. And I bought all of it because I'm a fucking idiot. So, basically, there's a lot of costume DLCs. There's costume DLCs for the Raiden Kuzunoha games, the original Soul Hackers, SMT4, Persona 4, and there's 2 Persona 5 costume packs, along with swimsuits, because of course, and some other stuff. And there's also like a bonus storyline, more demons, a grinding DLC, which I'll talk about that in a second. Point is, the DLC for this game was absolutely ridiculous. And look, this is a problem with Sega in general, what I'm about to bring up. See this whole bullshit about, if you buy the digital deluxe, you get all this DLC, but if you buy the physical version, you don't get any of that. Sega, fucking stop this. I am sick of this. This whole, you need to buy the digital version to get all the DLC. Cut that shit out. I am sick of that. Sonic Colors Ultimate did it, and now Soul Hackers 2 is doing it. Like, as I say, this is probably more of a Sega problem than it is an Atlas problem. I am sick of that. As somebody who likes to buy physical games, I hate it. I fucking hate it. Like, really? Really? You can't just give us codes for the DLC with the physical version? Like, really? Ugh. I don't know. I just need to get that out. But regardless, is the DLC worth it? Honestly, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Like, if you want to buy just the costumes pack, or just the DLC, or just the, the what you call it, the bonus story pack, just so you can experience that kind of stuff, sure. But a lot of this stuff, like, if you want to buy that stuff on its own, sure, you do you. But that's the thing. Remember I said there was 2 Persona 5 DLCs? Well, one of them is the Shujin Academy uniforms, which comes in the DLC pack. Or actually, or those come separately. Regardless. But the other one, the one that I think people were actually interested in, was the Phantom Thief pack, where they are dressed up in their the Phantom Thief costume for Persona 5. That one is exclusive to the Digital Deluxe. That is ridiculous. That is so fucking dumb. Like, fine, if you want to have a big bundle where you can get everything, that's absolutely fine. Some people will buy that. But no, don't just make something exclusive to the Digital Deluxe like that. Like, that is not okay. Like, we can't go about treating that like that's okay. And the worst thing is, I have it, and what's funny is that whenever you use the Shujin uniforms, this is more of a nitpick than anything. Whenever you use the Shujin uniforms, it plays Last Surprise as the battle theme, which, makes sense. But then I saw, because in the settings, whenever you go to choose the thing, there's a music setting where you can choose the music to be a specific song or just the one that correlates with Bingo's costume, which I appreciate. I appreciate that option. So you can dress up like Persona 5 characters and have Raiden music playing. Like, I like that option. But I noticed that there was 2 Persona 5 tracks. So what I thought that the Shujin uniforms were going to have Last Surprise and the Phantom Thief outfits were going to have Takeover. Because, that makes sense. But no, the Phantom Thief outfits play fucking Keeper of Lust for some reason. I'm like, Persona 5 has 2 battle themes. Why not just use both battle themes instead of Keeper of Lust, which is like the worst boss theme in that game? Like, I don't know, that really pissed me off. Thankfully you can change it so it can play Last Surprise while you're wearing the Phantom Thief outfits, which, that was a workaround, but still, I just thought that. Like, it's like you're locking this behind this ridiculous paywall and you're not even making it, like, entirely worth it. Like, really? Not that would have made it worth it, granted, but you know what I mean? It's like, they still half-assed is my point. But I think there were some other things out behind that, like the fucking maid outfit that was based on one of the characters from Soul Hackers 1, which only works for Ringo. And then, I think Iho was also locked behind it, which is this game's resident protagonist, Frost, which fucking, for some reason, every game in this franchise just has to have, and I don't know why. But yeah, he was also... or she, I guess. She was also locked behind that, and that was really, really dumb. That was really stupid. So, yeah, the DLC, it isn't great. But I do quickly want to talk about the Lost Numbers story DLC pack. So, the Lost Numbers story DLC pack is done through side missions. Basically, throughout the game, you'll unlock different side missions with a character named Nana, and you'll end up doing multiple missions for her. I do want to bring up, though, that make sure that you do these before a certain point in the story. Otherwise, you will miss out on certain scenes and some character building that kind of foreshadows shit that happens later in the game. I found out about that through some other people who were talking about it. So, yeah, it is possible to miss certain scenes if you do this story too late. But regardless, this is basically just you go back into different dungeons looking for new bosses with this new character, Nana, with you. And the cool part about this is that Nana actually helps you in battle. You will attack with your 4 party members, and then she'll do a random attack as well, which is, that's pretty cool. She'll even help you out during the actual boss fight. But honestly, I just didn't find this very interesting. Like, I don't know. This, honestly, a lot of people are saying this feels like, like Persona 5 Royal or Persona 4 Golden or Strange Journey Redux, that kind of thing where it's like the re-release with new content. People are saying this feels like that if it was DLC, and yeah, it does, because with those games, they were able to rework the entire game to work with that new storyline, where in this case, it's just DLC told through a side mission, and it feels like a complete afterthought. All those people who are saying, oh, Royal should have just been DLC, this is why it wasn't. It's because they reworked all of Persona 5 to work with the new additions from Royal. When you don't do that, you have to have shitty compromises, like what was done with the Lost Numbers pack here. Now, I didn't finish the Lost Numbers storyline. I got up to what I believe is the final boss. You get a whole new dungeon out of this eventually. Granted, the dungeon is really, really long and really, really repetitive. Like, it's the most repetitive dungeon in the fucking game. It's literally the same fucking floor over and over and over again, where the obstacles just change locations. Like, that's pretty much what it is. But I got up to the final boss of it, and Jesus Christ, the final boss of this DLC is ridiculous. Like, I think Gnarly said that if you're going to beat that, you're going to need the grinding DLC. And honestly, I can see where he's coming from. I didn't bother because I didn't want to be over leveled for the actual game's final boss. Which, by the way, the game's final boss, don't know if I commented on this earlier. Game is a great final boss. Final boss of this game's awesome. Like, I absolutely loved it. But I didn't want to be too over leveled for the final boss and ruin that for me, so I just didn't bother with it. And honestly, I still don't really care. The whole story the story of the Lost Numbers DLC pack just didn't really make me give a shit. I didn't think Nana was a particularly interesting character. Like the whole plot twist that happens in it just feels... I just didn't care. To be blunt, I just really didn't care about any of this. So, that I wouldn't say is worth it. Like, even if you enjoy the game story and all that, like, still, the Lost Numbers DLC just isn't fucking worth it. But, anyway, so, now, on to my sort of closing up here. Is this game worth it? If you are a fan of Megaten or Persona, Shin Megami Tensei, any of that kind of stuff, should you pick this game up? Or even if you're a fan of just JRPGs in general, should you pick this up? Honestly, yeah. I think if you're a fan of turn-based RPGs, and especially if you're a Megaten fan of any type, whether it's Persona, SMT, any of that, sure, yeah, pick this up. I think this game, despite how harsh I've actually been on it, is pretty good. I struggle to call it great, though. Like, it has a lot of flaws with it, so I don't know if I'd call it great, but it is a good game. It's definitely worth your time if you're a fan of JRPGs. Now, what would I rate it? I don't usually do ratings, but I thought since this is kind of out of my usual style, why not? So, honestly, now I know this might sound low to some people, but for me, I don't consider this a low rating. I'd say I'd give it like maybe a 6.5 or a light 7. That's what I'd give it. Like a 6.5 or a light 7. No, not even 6.5, sorry. Like a high 6, low 7. That's what I'd give this game. And yeah, that is a recommendation for me. If you're a fan of JRPGs, turn-based RPGs, Megaten, all that good shit, then yeah, you should. I absolutely think you should pick this game up. And maybe don't buy all the DLC because, as I said, it's not fucking worth it. But yeah, I do honestly recommend you pick this game up if you're a fan of the genre. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment in the comments below telling me what your thoughts on this game are if you've played it, and if you haven't played it, tell me if I've convinced you to either play it or not play it. I'm interested to hear what your reasons are. Subscribe if you haven't already. I will be uploading way more reviews like this soon. I've been slacking on videos recently, but soon I hope to come back and start making more review videos like this one, or even better than this one, hopefully. So, yeah, if you like reviews of games, not even just RPGs, but a lot of other different games, be sure to subscribe because I got a lot more of that coming soon, hopefully. So, yeah, as I say, subscribe, have a way. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.